This is the Ezra Live podcast. This is my third live. First one I had a guest. I had Broadway Joel on here. Second one I did by myself. I was supposed to have a guest. This one I didn't really plan on having a guest, or I guess I was supposed to have the same guest as last time, but this one's on me. Last one's on him. This one's on me. But anyways, I had to get something out this week. Didn't do a regular Spotify or Apple podcast. No fights really this week, as far as like unless you're like really excited for Savannah Marshall, but no MMA, no boxing. It's kind of a slow week. A lot of the attention is on Devin Haney versus Kambosos. So let's pull this up real quick. Boom, there it is. And people are worried about Kambosos not signing it, and of course that was just like a dumb whatever the hell that was. That was a work, whatever he was trying to do about, checking the signatures, all that nonsense. I knew the deal was going to get done because that was the only way Top Rank was going to get Devin Haney. And Top Rank didn't go all the way to sign Devin Haney, not to give him the Kambosos fight, not to build, get two fights with him and Kambosos to build the Lomachenko pay-per-view. I really like this fight. I'm really glad Devin Haney got in this fight. Devin Haney seems like he's open to all comers. He just wants his opportunity. This is really, like as far as like building Devin Haney and getting him to like the elite level and getting him to superstar status. Kambosos, you couldn't ask for like a better opponent to get to that point, right? Kambosos gets a big, massive upset over Teo, but I don't think he's the highest level fighter. I don't think he's the biggest, I don't even think he's probably, if we added it up, right, we went through all the guys in the weight, he probably barely scraped top 5 and 135, maybe even outside of it. So you got to think, let's go right now. You got Tank Davis, you got Lomachenko, you got Devin Haney, Ryan Garcia, and maybe Kambosos right there. If like Teal's out, then you have to go maybe Kambosos. But like I told you, he's barely scraping the top 5 at 135. And I think this is the perfect fight for Devin Haney at this point of his career. And this is a perfect fight for him to, he could look very impressive in this fight and really show that he's levels above what Kambosos brings to the table. But we're going to see, right? Because a lot of times when Haney fights, although I defend him, like, I feel like people are really all the way out on Haney, or they're all the way in and like think he's going to be, the next big thing, the next great fighter at elite level. And I see the potential that he could get there. But a lot of times after a Haney fight, it's it's a lot more. It never leaves you like, it's never like the satisfaction that you want watching him fight, right? You never had like the complete performance where there wasn't a shaky part, where he just put it together. It was not like a Mayweather versus Gotti or Mayweather versus Manfredi or Corral. It's not that. It's not those performances, right? It's not Canelo versus, I don't know, what is Canelo's performance like that? Cotto, I guess. Canelo versus Cotto, Canelo versus Chavez. Canelo when he ran through, what people say is European tour. It's not like that. It's not those performances that you're like, that's the one. That's the one that shows me that Haney is at an elite level at the top of, could beat anyone or compete with anyone at 135. We haven't had that yet. It seems like the further we get away from those performances, the better we can talk about Devin Haney, or the better people do talk about Devin Haney. But we have to remember those performances. Let's see, Broadway Joe. Let's see, I'm still learning. Oh, here we go. 140 is the most deep division. 140 is the most deep division in undisputed, and 135 is going undisputed. Boxing is in a good space. I 100% agree with you, and I think it's 100% a great year for boxing. I think it's like building up of just like the schedule alone. It's amazing. It's like Broadway said, this is the right time to get in to start doing a YouTube for podcast, right? And he's right. He's 100% right, and he's taking full advantage of it. But it's so competitive that every weekend we have great fights, interesting matchups, and we're finally starting to talk about fights. Before last year, it felt like we were just talking about the business of boxing and all the politics of it, but we're starting to actually talk fights, and that's what we're talking right now. Kambosos and Haney. So, like I said, though, this is a perfect matchup for Haney to, if he is what people say he is, right? Well, he has all that potential and puts it together, and it's the perfect package to put together, take the undisputed crown, and introduce himself to the levels of Tank, Lomachenko, who would be his next opponent if he has to fight Kambosos twice. That would be the next opponent after that. And Ryan Garcia now would be all the pressure be on Ryan Garcia to introduce himself at that level with the top 135 guys. Then all the pressure would move to Ryan Garcia to introduce himself to that level, because Haney would now graduate to the level of Lomachenko and Tank at 135. Now, I did have a question and I asked this on Twitter: if Haney wins this fight, do you consider him pound for pound? But then this led to a whole nother thing, right? It led to what is pound for pound? What do you judge on pound for pound? And it turns out that no one has a right or wrong answer on pound for pound is so, you know, what you're looking for. It really is. It's really pound for pound is what you're looking for. So the more interesting, I guess, question, is when I have another guest on here, or even if Broadway's listening and he can answer this, what are you looking for on pound for pound? What is your criterias? What are you basing it on? Right? Because if a lot of people base it on just like skill, like what they feel this fighter can do, or what they feel, who would win if they were in the same size. But flaw with that, right? Flaw thinking of that is the higher weights you get, and then the lower weights you get, usually the lower weights is going to be a little bit more skilled, or at least like his speed, right? How do you correlate that? So if you got a guy, say Usyk, right? Usyk to me is number one pound for pound right now, according to my list. But if you say him versus Fulton, right, in your imaginary mind, you say there's no weight class, they're the same weight class, they fight each other, who wins? Fulton speed, Fulton's it's just speed alone, the way he moves and everything like that. How do you translate those together, right? How do you like make it to where like they're the same weight class? Well, he's gonna be a lot faster than Usyk. He's gonna move a lot better than Usyk. So it's like you're somehow gonna figure out a way to determine how to level that out. I don't get that. It gets super confusing if you think about it like that. To me, I just think resume, right? I think resume alone should be how we judge. It's resume across all the weight classes and to see who the number one guy pound for pound is. So I came up with my list here. Let's pull this up right now. And this is my pound for pound list, and it's resume only. Now I did take in relevancy, right? So like let's say Manny Pacquiao was still fighting. Let's say Broadway said. Okay, Broadway said I mostly based it on resume. Okay, so he's with me, but I also use the eye test. If someone's skill is obvious, like Terrence Crawford. Okay, see, I'm kind of along the lines with you here, Broadway. Kind of along the lines with you, because what I do is I do resume, right, and then I do relevancy. So I'm looking at really like what I take consideration the last 8 fights, right? So because I think 8 fights is within 2 to 3 years of your fighting career. Because if say Manny Pacquiao was still fighting right now, and you just based off resume, he'd be number one if you don't take in relevancy, right? Well, what did he do in the last 2 to 3 years? Last 8 fights, who was he fighting? Who did he win? If you don't, and who did he lose to? If you don't take that in, then it could screw up your whole list. I also do the part where I do eye tests is how did you beat the opponents, right? How did you beat your opponents? So not just what I think your skill can be, right? Not like how a lot of people are judging Devin Haney as what they think he can be. No, what did you do to level to the opponent, and what level was that opponent that you did that to? So number one, I have Usyk. Usyk is my number one pound for pound because he went through the cruiserweight division. It wasn't a bad division, actually pretty good division, right? Probably one of the strongest it was in a while. He went through a tournament and wiped out all the guys in that division. Then he goes to heavyweight and beats the guy that has the most belts and is arguably the best heavyweight in the world at the time, Anthony Joshua. Now he did it through multiple weight classes. And if you go to heavyweight is like 3 weight classes, especially like the difference between if you have Anthony Joshua or Tyson Fury, they're a lot bigger than what Usyk is, right? And he's beating top guys. So he beat all the top guys in the cruiserweight, and he beat one of the top dogs, right? Arguably the best heavyweight in heavyweight at heavyweight. So it's like, to me, that's like the definition of pound for pound. So the past 8 fights, all strong, right? All strong wins, all strong opponents. And he's dominating his weight division, and he beats a top guy heavyweight. It's hard to go against that Usyk, right? Then you go to Canelo. Now, the argument against Canelo is maybe the opponents aren't the opponents that people want him to be fighting, right? Or they don't have the name, or people are not really sure what level they're at. But he's dominated from 154 to 160, and he fought a pound for pound guy when he was at 160, right? A top pound for pound guy in Triple G. He has a win over pound for pound guy. So he dominates 160 and then goes 167 and cleans it out. Right. And he's obviously the number one guy, 167. So over 3 weight classes, he's determined he was the number one guy. He's fought all the top guys in each weight class that he's come in. Oh, my bad. I'm still learning how this thing works. It's a little shaky at times, but he's a top guy all 3 weight classes he's been in. So that, to me, that's a pound for pound, right? And he's also moving up to 175. Now I'm not taking that into consideration yet, even though he has been there before and beat Kovalev, which was a very decent win at that point. But he's also moving 175. So I think like the next few fights, right? If you got Usyk versus Joshua, you got Canelo versus Bivol, you have Spence Ugas, you got, let's see what they do with Estrada, Inoue versus Donaire, and let's see what happens with Crawford. These next few fights are gonna could really shake up what the pound for pound is, right? Like there could be a loss between all the names I said. There could be one loss in there, right? There could be devastating wins, like a devastating knockout, and you're beating the level of competition like that. Can move you up. Another thing with Canelo is he's dominating the competition. There's not really close fights here, and he's getting either a finish or he's clearly winning on the scorecards. So that's another thing, the way he's doing it. I got Inoue. Inoue is controversial because you don't really know the guys he like. If you're just a casual fan or you're not a guy that pays attention to the lower weight divisions, you see Inoue and you look at the names, you're like, I don't recognize these names. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I was kind of in your boat too. I knew who Inoue was, but the more I got into like boxing Twitter, and I started hearing all these things about Inoue, right? And I knew he was good. From what I seen, I was like, oh, he's a high level guy, but I don't know his wins. I'm not familiar with his thing. And then I started looking into it, and I'm like, yeah, this guy's dominating over multiple weight classes, right? He's dominating over multiple weight classes, but he's also blowing through guys. Like he's blowing through the top guys in those weight classes. Now I do have a little problem that he got to 115 and didn't fight. He didn't fight Chocolatito, didn't fight Estrada, didn't even fight so Rungvisai, right? He doesn't have any of those guys. So he did kind of enter weight class, but I think that mostly politics probably played a game in that. That's still to me like kind of like a knock against him. But he's all, look at like the guys he's beat. They're all top ranked guys. They're all excellent records. They're all champions, and he runs through them, and he's running through competition. And the way he's beating guys is almost like if no one's really able to compete with him. So to me, all those things added together showed me that he was a high level fighter. And I thought, yeah, he wasn't my number one, wasn't my number two, but I thought him and Estrada could really switch either 3 and 4. But I thought I was very comfortable putting him at number 3. And then we have Estrada, who has beat Chocolatito, who was a pound for pound guy, right? Beat Chocolatito. Even though controversial, I'm going to take the official decision. I thought it was a close fight. It went his way. I got to go with it, right? Beats Soron Visai. Let me pull his up actually too, so I make sure. Okay, he beats Quadras, Roman Gonzalez, Beeman, Soron Visai, Victor Mendez, Felipe. I'm not gonna say his last name. And then he does lose a decision to Soron Visai, but he gets it back in the rematch. Right, beats Quadras again. Like this is a heck of a run. He beats a pound for pound guy, Roman Gonzalez. He beats the guy that beat Roman Gonzalez, right? Even though he took a loss in that. And I think the loss is why I had Inoue above him. I think that was like my kind of like determining factor, was like he did have a loss within the last 8 fights. Earl Spence. Let's get to Earl Spence right here. So he runs through Danny Garcia, Sean Porter, Mikey Garcia. And I know Mikey Garcia is undersized here. I understand that. Mikey Garcia is still a high level fighter. And the way that Earl Spence beats Mikey Garcia, in my opinion, it's pretty wide margin. It's by like boxing technique, right? It's really by boxing skill that he beats Mikey Garcia. It's not like he really manhandled him, like he used his size or he put his pressure like kind of like Tyson Fury did to like Wilder. It wasn't like that. He really used his skill. It reminded me a lot of Mayweather kind of did to Marquez. Even though Mayweather was bigger than Marquez, he kind of outskills him and like puts a lesson on him. And I kind of felt the same way with Mikey Garcia and Earl Spence. Ocampo, nothing brag on belt. Lamont Peterson, this was all right win. I kind of not too high on Lamont Peterson. Kell Brook, I think, is honestly his best win. I think Kell Brook, if you remember, when Kell Brook's on top of his game, he beats Sean Porter clearer than anyone at that time, and was a really high level fighter. Now Kell Brook was coming off a loss to Triple G, but still very good in that fight. It's not the Kell Brook that Crawford beat. Like Crawford beat a much lesser Kell Brook. So I actually think that's his best win. But at the weight division that Earl Spence is at, he clearly has the best resume at 147, and he's clearly won all these fights. Even like the Sean Porter fight that was close, I thought Earl Spence clearly won, but it was a close fight. It was a good competitive fight, but I thought he did what he needed to do to get the for sure win. So I don't really feel like anyone's really been kind of really close to Earl Spence. I thought he's won everything kind of convincing, and he's had the best resume to me at 147. Then we go to Terrence Crawford. Now Terrence Crawford and Earl Spence are right there neck and neck. I'll admit that. But Terrence Crawford has, a string of kind of whatever wins. Kell Brook, who's, later in his career, right? Amir Khan, who's completely shot. Jose Benavidez Jr. has never really been proven at 147. Jeff Horn, who, got the win over Pacquiao, but nothing really else from that. Indongo, I know he wins undisputed in that. to me, undisputed is just a title. It depends who you beat. You know what I mean? Like it's just not. It's not like anything unless you beat someone that's really great. That's why we'll get back to Haney and all that about the pound for pound thing. But he beats Ndago, Felix Diaz. Like I said, there's questionable wins here. I think Victor Postal, that's in 2016. Lundy, like I said, I'm not doubting Terrence Crawford. I know what level Terrence Crawford is. I know the way he's smoking guys. That's why I have him so highly ranked on the top on the pound for pound with my resume list. But I just don't think that this, especially like the last 8, holds up with Earl Spence. I don't. I think it's close though. I have him close, but I don't think it holds up. But bro, let's right here, bro. Bud's got 10 KOs in a row. I know, but look at the level of the competition. You know what I mean? Like it's not it's not the to me it's not Earl Spence. It just isn't. And I undisputed means something, but yes, not all undisputed titles are equal. They're not. Like if we're gonna say this right now, Haney's gonna win undisputed from Kambosos, right? Is that equivalent? Is that one of the best undisputeds of all time? Is that no? It's not. I mean, Kambosos is not that the highest level of fighters. I wouldn't even come close to saying he's elite, right? So that doesn't mean that like because Haney won that and he's undisputed, it puts him with some legendary status. I just don't see that. Sometimes it's right place, right time. Now I think it's a great win for Haney. And I thought Haney had the best win at second best win at 135 last year when he beat Jojo Diaz. I think that if he wins this year, he's probably gonna get the best win at 135 this year, or if he beats Kambosos. But it's not like just because you put the name undisputed on it doesn't mean it's some legendary win. I'm not gonna go there with that. Like to me, everyone knows me. Titles don't mean that much to me. Honestly, they lost a lot of their meaning, and it's just to me the names you're beating. Like that's really all it is to me. Who's the names you're beating. So let's go. We had Terrence Crawford. Let's go to Josh Taylor. Now Josh Taylor is controversial because people he felt like he lost to Jack Catterall. I thought it was a close fight. I was okay with Josh Taylor winning the fight. But that performance did kind of knock him because I don't think Jack Catterall is the highest level fighter, and he struggled in that fight. But before that he beats Carlos Ramirez, clearly, right? Gets a stoppage. He beats he gets the unanimous decision against Carlos Ramirez. He drops him a few times. All right. Remember Jose Ramirez, him stopping Jose Ramirez. I don't know. My memory is shot. Kong Sung, he gets a KO, the body shot. Progress, excellent fight. A lot of people feel like that was a lot closer, and some people feel that Progress maybe should have pulled that one out. I thought Taylor won that fight, but that was an excellent fight. I think Progress is really one of the more underrated fighters right now in boxing, where if it's due to the strangeness of his career, him fighting on Triller, one like fighting undercard at PBC, now he's with Probellum, long gaps of him not really fighting anyone relevant in a long time. But I think that win's going to age even better because I think if Progress gets more opportunities, which is supposed to fight Catterall, I think we're gonna really see how good Progress is. I think he's an excellent fighter. He beats Ryan Martin, Victor Postal. So I thought Josh Taylor won a heck of a run. I think the Catterall one kind of weighs against him. I want to see where he goes next, what he can do at 147. Next, we have Tyson Fury. Now, a lot of people won't put heavyweight, especially like Tyson Fury, on the pound for pound list, but mine's is resume only. It's not about skill or anything like that. So, resume, Tyson Fury beats Deontay Wilder, right? Who's arguably, just like Joshua, is arguably one of the best heavyweights in the world, right? He's arguably maybe the best heavyweight in the world. He beats him twice, clearly, and the other one's a draw, right? In a fight that a lot of people felt he won that fight. I felt he won that fight, but he beats him twice. He stops him twice. Arguably the best heavyweight in the world, he beats him twice. Beats Otto Wallen, which is a win that's aging a lot better than when it originally happened. When that originally happened, people thought that was just like a tune-up. Like they thought he's just wasting our time here. Now Otto Wallen, people were probably going to pick him over White. People want Anthony Joshua to fight him next if he wasn't going to fight Usyk. And also, remember, he dethrones Klitschko. He dethrones Klitschko, who was the best heavyweight at the time. That wasn't even to argue. He was the best heavyweight at the time. He outboxes him. He puts a boxing lesson on Klitschko, and he dethrones him. So I don't think really you could question Tyson Fury's resume. Now, I do knock a few points that he beat the same guy twice. So he beats Deontay Wilder twice. It could be on my, the reason why I knock points on that is remember Ricardo Mayorga beats Vernon Forrest twice. Now, Ricardo Mayorga never really goes on to do anything else great in his career. So that could be just like you have this guy's number. So I'm not gonna give you 100% credit that you get a big win against the same guy twice. So even Usyk, who's fighting Joshua, if he doesn't knock out Joshua, he just kind of decisions him again, it won't be the same level of win that he had the first time. That's just me. That's that could be strange rule, whatever, but that's just the way I see it. We got another one to see here. Oh, is it here? Clean how you got it going on Twitter and YouTube. I was commenting on your Twitter live and then realized this was actually on YouTube once threw Joel's handle up there. Oh, I appreciate it. Appreciate it. Let's see here. Let's see what Joel's got to say. To me, when you unify, that's when I get impressed. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because there's so many politics, like the titles, right? There's so many things to like the way that the titles work, and there's so much nonsense in the rankings and all that. I just give me the name. Just give me honestly a decent name. Like if Kambosos, right? I know Haney. Whoever wins this going to be undisputed. Whatever. Okay, it's a good matchup between guys. But if Haney just beat Gervonta Tank Davis for no belt, that's a way bigger win to me. I think it's a way bigger win to everybody. I mean, I think we're lying to ourselves if we say that the undisputed is bigger than him beating Tank Davis or him beating even Ryan Garcia. Like that's not the case. Okay, here, boxing lesson on Klitschko. That was a shitty fight, and Fury won by circumstance. I disagree. I think that was he out Klitschko. I mean, we can't argue. So we did. He out Klitschko. Now, was it a boring fight? Maybe, right? But Klitschko was having boring fights his whole career. That was his career was boring. I mean, that's the honest truth of it. So if Tyson Fury out boring Klitschko to get the win, I mean, Klitschko been doing that to everyone. I was really impressed with that performance. I thought that was an amazing performance. No one was doing that. Klitschko was running through everyone, and he was doing it in a very boring fashion. And then someone did exactly what Klitschko was very good at. Someone did that to him, and he couldn't do anything about it. That's why I knew. That's what I knew when Fury, while I was fighting Fury, I was like, Fury's pretty damn good. I think people are sleeping on him on this. And I had a podcast to show it too. That's why I record everything I say about boxing, because I hate when people say like, "Oh no, you didn't say that." Yes, I did. And I really thought that was an excellent performance. I understand it's boring, but I think that because it was two high level fighters and no one had really beaten Klitschko like that before, I thought it made it exciting. One thing I said was, who was supposed to fight Virgil Ortiz, McKinson. He fought, on the undercard after Ortiz pulls out. And, the crowd didn't like it. The people at home didn't like it. Everybody thought it was boring. It's because of his style. It's not that exciting when you're just not fighting high-level competition. Now, if he was doing what he did in that fight to Virgil Ortiz, it becomes a lot more exciting. And I compared to like walking a tightrope, right? If you're walking a tightrope, it's not that exciting to watch someone walk a tightrope. It is when he's as high as a skyscraper. Yes, it becomes very exciting. But a guy walking 10 feet off the ground, it don't pique my interest, right? So that's what I feel like what Tyson Fury did in that Klitschko fight. That he was walking a tightrope, and I was like a skyscraper, as big as Klitschko. You know what I mean? So I like that performance. I thought, I always hear it's boring. I understand where that's coming from. Undisputed fights are almost all good fights, or fights we want to see. Charlo Castano, Taylor Ramirez, Canelo Plant, and people anticipating Haney Kambosos to be a good fight. I agree with you. A lot of times, yes, I agree with you. The guys that had the belt are very good. I just think that if we're talking about Charlo Castano and we're talking about Kambosos Haney, I mean, we have to admit that's not equal, right? We have to admit that. We have to admit that Taylor Ramirez is better than Kambosos Haney. It just is. I don't think Kambosos, and that's because Kambosos really is not holding up his side of it. Now, maybe I'm wrong, right? Maybe he's a lot more skilled than what I'm giving him credit for, or what I'm seeing, or what anyone's really giving him credit for. Besides Broadway, I think Broadway is a Kambosos believer because he beat his boy Teo. But we'll see. But right now, just on paper, it's not equal to me, Josh Taylor Ramirez. It just isn't. I think maybe Canelo Plant's like a little closer than I would say then, because maybe Plant wasn't really as proven when they were going to fight. It was this kind of really what people were kind of basing that on, was just kind of the Plant had a style that could give Canelo problems. Let's see here. I agree with that take, but we are giving him more credit because of the notoriety of Tank and Garcia due to their promoters. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's just due to the promoters. I think that those guys just kind of have star power. They kind of have like an it factor to it, and that happens. And I think that Haney, which was funny, because I always hear like people say like, well, Haney was the it guy when he first came in. he's kind of lost that. And I think it's a lot of it's because of the performances. Maybe we could blame DAZN. We're going to see, right? He's on top right now. He's on ESPN. There's no excuses anymore. I think a lot of it could be because of performances. I think he's had a lot of blah performances. But we're going to see, right? We're going to see. But I do think that no one's down the Tank's top guy 135, and no one's down that Ryan Garcia could be a top guy 135. I think people are doubting whether Kambosos is a one-hit wonder. We're going to find out. Maybe we haven't seen the best Kambosos because of his promoter. Not to say I'm giving Haney pound for pound either, but I think Undisputed and pound for pound are rankings that should be respected in their own class per se. I don't explain. I don't know what that means. Respected in their own class because it's pound for pound. So I don't like. What do you mean by class? If you want to, go further on that, because I'm not sure really what that means. Let's see here. I saw him fight live, and all I can say is he's really fast hands and really fast feet. He is. I agree with you on that. I really agree with you on that. I think he's actually a lot better going backwards too. I think when he comes forward, I think he could get into some trouble, right? I think when he comes forward, he's a little bit more of an average fighter. When he goes backwards, it looks like his hand speeds definitely play a bigger factor, and his feet are fast enough to, when he moves back, he get back in a position really quick and respond very quick. I think coming forward, he kind of becomes a lot more basic and kind of just like, come forward basic fighter. I don't believe that he's very dynamic coming forward. I thought going backwards against Teal, where Teal just kept forcing him to go backwards, was bad strategy by Teal. Didn't never adjusted, and he should have really made Kambosos kind of come at him at moments of that fight, try to set something up. But we're gonna see. Like I said, that's what I'm saying. If Kambosos wins, right, he beats Haney, and then he goes to fight Loma. Of course, he's gonna have a lot more credibility. People are gonna respect him a lot more as Undisputed. And if he beats Loma, then then we're talking about the best guy at 135. And then the discussions could be had about him and Tank, but he'll definitely be the most proven. It's not even close. He has Teal, Haney, and Loma, right? Even if he has Teal and Haney, that's like more proven than anyone because they at 135 right now. So we're gonna find out. I'm just saying on paper, if Haney blows through Kambosos, right, we will have some. There were the clues were there, I guess. The signs were there. He was Kambosos was really never to that level, and he kind of got hot on the right night. That's what I would say. I do want to jump into one last thing before I wrap this up, and that's what's a better win, Kambosos Haney or Valdez Stevenson? Now, to me, I did not think this was a debate. Honestly, I did not think this was. I thought that Valdez is clearly a better win than Kambosos, but now the discussion was. I've had the discussion on the space today, and maybe it needs to go back to and think about it, right? Because Valdez has the win over Burchell, but Kambosos has a win over Teal, and I think that Teal has a bigger win over Loma, so he's more proven at that point, and Valdez has struggled against lesser competition. But so is Kambosos. It's very interesting. It's a lot closer than whatever I ever thought. Valdez and Stevenson 100%. That's where I was at. That's where I was at too. But let's think about it. And Broadway Joe agrees, right? But let's think about it. Like I said, Valdez biggest win. Burchell was not favored in that fight. A lot of people felt Burchell was going to win that fight. Kambosos' biggest win. Teal. He's not favored in that fight. No one's picking him in that fight. He beats Teal, right? Now, Valdez does it in a more emphatic fashion, yes. And Kambosos, though, does it pretty clearly, as well, right? He does it clearly as well. I don't think anyone was thinking like, oh, Teal was robbed in that fight. Now, let's go to the fights before it. Now, Valdez had just struggled against Blue Nose, right? He got his jaw broken in a fight previous to that. Now Kambosos struggles against Lee Shelby. Now, wait, who broke Valdez's jaw? Let's find out right now, actually. Let's see, wait, actually. One second. Oscar Valdez. I hate when a box track and it goes into the amateur career. It's like, I don't give a damn about that. Who's looking up these guys' amateur career? Scott Quick breaks his jaw, right? So I don't know. I think that this might actually be closer than I originally thought. And I think that Valdez could be in a similar situation as Kambosos. It's like, did he just catch Burchell at the right time where Burchell couldn't make weight? And then he ends up ruining Burchell because we just saw what Burchell did. So that age isn't really aging better, right? Burchell just gets smoked. The next fight gets stopped. So that kind of hurts a loss, which Teofimo could go on and do damage at 140. And then that'd be a better win for Kambosos, right? Which would make it a better win for Haney. I think it's a lot closer. I never really put this together, but I think it's actually very close on what the better win is. I'm still leaning Valdez, right? I'm still leaning Valdez because Valdez was a top prospect, never lost. And his biggest fight did in emphatic fashion and was superior to Burchell. But I think the debate's there to be had. When I didn't really ever put thought process to it, now that I think about it, I'm like, the debate's there to be had. I really do think that. But like I said, though, I think either of these guys win that they're pound for pound in the pound for pound rankings. No, they're close. They're getting closer than the probably top 15. What is it? Broadway said Burchell is a better win than Teo. Why? Who did Burchell beat that's better than Teo beating Loma? I don't agree with that. Because Teo beats Loma, Comey, right? And smokes Comey, right? Puts him to sleep. Keeps Loma home for 7 rounds. I don't think Burchell's a better win than Teo. In my opinion, there's definitely a huge uptick on the amount of respect that is paid on fighters who unify almost as if they earned a median pound for pound status. Especially when going undisputed. I agree with you that is like what people's logic is on that. I don't agree with it, but if you're beating the names right, I think that Valdez and Haney, they beat Kambosos and Valdez. Stevenson and Haney. They win their next fight. They're one more fight away, right? Especially if Haney's going to fight Loma, and if Shakur, if he moves up to 135, which could be very interesting, or he just kind of dominates. He just kind of dominates the 130 class. But I think they're right there. That puts him in the conversation to start entering, I guess. But I just wouldn't put him in there. A lot of people are saying that Haney would enter that. I don't know. That's why pound for pound rankings are so controversial. Like whoever came up with it, but I love it. Yeah, it really is. I don't think anyone can have a wrong answer. If you really think about like what pound for pound is and how everyone doesn't really have like the necessary criteria, like lockdown, we don't really have a full definition. I can't tell you anyone's wrong. That's why I say resume. Mine is a resume. It's not a pound for pound thing. It's a resume, pound for pound resume ranking. Because that one to me is more like someone could tell me I'm wrong, and I could tell someone they're wrong. If someone just says like, well, no, it's just on raw ability and what I think this person can do, then how can anyone be wrong? He beat Takashita, Mura, and Mayura in the fight of the year. I still don't think that's better than Comey. And because it's fight of the year, does that make it a better win? Like, okay, if Colin, right, just beat, Colin just lost to Leigh Wood. But because it was fight of the year, is that a better win for Leigh Wood as far as like his resume? I don't know. I don't know about that. I don't think that Agati beating Mickey Ward in fight of the year makes it a better win in his resume. I don't think we go resume. We're like, well, he does have that win over Mickey Ward. It's a good fight, legendary fight, but I don't think it makes it as far as a resume builder, I don't think it's a better win. Oh, Takashi. Okay, I didn't even, I pronounced it wrong. I thought it was correct. So you didn't even have to correct me. I would have accepted it. I think Burchell is better due to his number of defenses. I don't know. I really don't know. That's up for debate. But that just shows you how close it is, right? If we're just going back and forth on this like that. I think to me that shows you how close that really is. But I don't know. I'm probably going to wrap it up here, guys. I appreciate you guys for listening. I appreciate the questions. Anyone can hop on whenever. I like to keep like open space. I kind of like it, just how the spaces are on Twitter. I don't mind my podcast being like that. I don't mind even me taking a back seat once in a while. But thank you guys for listening. It's been the As Raw Live podcast.